My girlfriend and I don't talk about what happened at that campsite in Kentucky. Not because we had a fight about it. We're still together. We're fine. We don't talk about it because every time one of us starts, the other one goes quiet in a way that makes it clear we're both picturing the same thing. We were camping at a remote site in the Daniel Boone National Forest 2 summers ago when a little girl appeared at the edge of our campsite alone. What we found the morning after she disappeared is the part neither of us can say out loud yet. My name is Jake. I'm 29. I work in project coordination, and before that weekend, I'd been camping maybe a dozen times in my life. Nothing serious, nothing backcountry, mostly established campgrounds with fire rings and bathroom facilities. This trip was my girlfriend Claire's idea. She'd been teaching second grade for 4 years at that point, and the school year had been rough. She wanted somewhere quiet. No cell signal, no lesson plans, no noise. I found a dispersed site off a Forest Service road in the Daniel Boone National Forest. No neighbors, no fee, just a clearing next to a narrow river about 6 miles from the nearest paved road. It looked perfect on the map. We left Cincinnati on a Friday morning and got to the campsite around 2 in the afternoon. The drive-in was slow. The Forest Service road was unpaved and my Civic wasn't really built for it, but the site itself was exactly what the photos showed. A wide clearing, maybe 60 feet across, with the river running along the south edge and tree cover on 3 sides. We set up the tent near the center of the clearing, got a fire going, and spent the first hour just sitting there doing nothing. That was the whole point. Claire had brought a book. I had a small cooler with food for 2 nights. We weren't planning on going anywhere. The first afternoon was completely normal. We ate early, watched the fire, talked about nothing in particular. The river was low. It hadn't rained much that summer, and you could hear it moving over the rocks. By around 4 o'clock, the light had shifted and the clearing had gone from warm to shaded. That's when I noticed the girl. She was standing at the riverbank maybe 50 feet from where we were sitting. 8 years old, maybe 9. It's hard to judge at a distance. She was in a pink shirt and dark shorts, and she was crouched down doing something at the water's edge. My first thought, honestly, was that there must be another campsite nearby that I hadn't noticed on the way in. Families camp in the Daniel Boone all the time. Kids wander. I didn't think anything of it. 30 minutes passed. The girl was still there. Claire noticed before I said anything. She'd been watching the riverbank for a while, I could tell, the way she does when she's reading a situation. She taught second grade. She knew how kids moved and where their attention went. She put her book down and said quietly, "Where are her parents?" I didn't have an answer. We both looked around the clearing toward the tree line. Up the trail, nobody. No other tent visible. No camp chair, no cooler. No truck parked somewhere I'd missed. Just the girl, alone at a remote campsite in the woods, crouching by the river like she had all the time in the world. Claire called out to her, not loud, just a normal, "Hey, are you okay?" The girl didn't respond, didn't look up. We waited another 15 minutes, then Claire decided to walk over. She was calm about it. She'd spent 4 years dealing with kids who shut down when adults approached them directly. She walked toward the riverbank slowly, not straight at the girl, kind of at an angle. I watched from my camp chair. When Claire had closed maybe half the distance between us and the girl stood up and took 3 steps back. Not running, not scared exactly, just retreating, maintaining the gap. Claire stopped. The girl stopped. Claire took 2 more steps. The girl matched them exactly. Claire came back to camp and sat down. She didn't say anything for a minute. Then she said, "Something is off about that kid." Coming from Claire, that sentence landed differently than it would have from me. This was someone who spent every day reading children, their behavior, their responses, their tells when something was wrong at home. When she said off, she didn't mean the girl was being strange. She meant she was looking at a child who wasn't behaving like a child. We decided to wait and see if a parent showed up. An hour passed. The girl didn't move from the riverbank. She wasn't playing anymore, just standing, facing our direction. Not staring directly at us, just oriented toward us, the way you might face a fire without looking at it. The light was getting low. I tried calling out to her myself. Name, parents, where she was from, nothing. She turned her head slightly when I spoke, which told me she could hear me. But she didn't answer, and she didn't move. By 7 o'clock, it was almost dark, and the girl was still there. We were out of reasonable explanations. The nearest trailhead was 6 miles away. There was no logical way a child that age was out here alone at dusk without something having gone seriously wrong. Claire wanted to go to her again. I said we should try to keep the fire bright and make noise so that if there were parents somewhere nearby, they'd find their way to us. We did that for another hour. At some point, without either of us deciding to, we moved inside the tent. I don't know exactly when I fell asleep, but I remember waking up once during the night and reaching for my phone to check the time. 2:47 a.m. I turned on the flashlight function and pointed it at the tent wall out of habit, and in the way the light filtered through the nylon, I could just make out the shadow of something outside, sitting still, about 4 feet from the tent door. I woke Claire up. We didn't talk. I pointed at the shadow. She saw it. We sat like that, both of us completely still, for what felt like a long time. The shadow didn't move. At some point, I realized the river sounds had stopped, or maybe I'd stopped hearing them. I'm not sure which. Eventually, the shadow shifted, and we heard footsteps moving away from the tent toward the tree line. Then, nothing. Neither of us went back to sleep. When it was light enough to see, we unzipped the tent and looked out. The clearing was empty. No girl, no one else, nothing. Claire went to the riverbank while I stayed near the tent. She called me over after a minute. There were footprints in the mud at the river's edge. Small, bare feet, no shoes. They led from the bank toward the tree line, and we followed them, both of us, about 30 feet into the trees. That's where they stopped. Not where she might have stepped onto harder ground. Not where the soil changed. Just stopped. Mid-stride, the last print pointing forward, and then nothing on the other side of it. No disturbance in the leaves. No broken branches. No other marks. At the point where the last footprint ended, there was a small pile of stones. River stones. Smooth and gray, stacked carefully on top of each other. 4 of them. Perfectly balanced. We didn't touch them. We went back to camp, packed everything in under 20 minutes, and drove out. We didn't talk much on the drive home. At one point, somewhere on the interstate, Claire said she'd thought about calling someone, a ranger, the county sheriff, but she didn't know what she would have said. A child had been near our campsite. In the morning, the child was gone. There were footprints that stopped in the middle of the forest. There were 4 stones. We never filed a report. I've thought about that a lot since then. That was 2 summers ago. Like I said, we don't talk about it. Claire still teaches 2nd grade. She's good at it, maybe better now than before, which I know sounds strange, but I've noticed that when a kid in her class goes quiet in a way that the other kids don't notice, she catches it immediately. Every time. I've never asked her if that started before or after that weekend in Kentucky. I don't think I want to know the answer. The one thing I'll say is this. I've been camping twice since then. Claire hasn't. Not once. She doesn't explain it, and I don't push. But last spring, I mentioned a trip to a friend, and she walked out of the room, and when she came back, her eyes were red. I asked if she was okay. She said yes. Then she asked me, very quietly, to please not go somewhere without cell signal. So I didn't. Some things change a person in ways that don't announce themselves. You only notice it later, in the small decisions, in what they avoid, in the way they look toward the tree line when you're standing outside at dusk, even in your own backyard, even somewhere completely ordinary. Like they're checking. Like it's become a habit they can't explain and don't try to. I'm not going to pretend I didn't know the risks of solo van life before I started. I did my research. I vetted every spot through iOverlander and free campsites before I slept anywhere new. I had a deadbolt on my side door, a backup camera that records continuously, and a P365 in the console that I know how to use. I'm a UX designer. My entire job is identifying where systems fail so they can be fixed before someone gets hurt. I thought I'd applied that same logic to how I traveled. I'd been doing van life for about 4 months when this happened, working remotely out of my Sprinter somewhere between Flagstaff and nowhere. I'd used a BLM pull-off outside Prescott twice before without incident. A wide gravel turnout off a dirt road, good sight lines in every direction, maybe 6 other vans parked on a busy weekend. The kind of spot that appears in every van life Instagram post because it looks like freedom. I parked up around 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, cooked dinner, answered some emails, and was asleep by 10. I remember thinking it was a perfect night, cool enough to leave the rooftop vent cracked, no wind. At 2:06 a.m., someone knocked on my driver's window. I came awake immediately. That's not unusual. Dispersed camping means the occasional early morning hiker passing your van, someone who needs to squeeze past a BLM ranger doing rounds. I turned on my interior light, waited a breath, and looked toward the cab. No one there. I checked the backup camera on my phone. Live feed, empty pull-off, no movement. I stayed still for a few minutes, decided it was something hitting the window, a branch, a bird, whatever, and went back to sleep. In the morning, I reviewed the backup camera footage from the previous night like I always do. The camera covers the rear of the van and a wide arc of the surrounding area. I found the 2 a.m. window. There was a person standing at my driver's side window for 11 minutes before they knocked. 11 minutes, facing the van. Not pacing, not checking their phone, not looking around the lot. Just standing there, facing my window, in the dark. When they knocked, the interior light came on. You can see the yellow wash of it on the gravel in the footage, and they walked away. Unhurried, back toward the far end of the pull-off. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. My first working theory was a disoriented camper who thought the van was a different vehicle. 11 minutes of standing in one spot doesn't support that theory well, but I was trying. I packed up and moved to a different spot that morning, a site I'd used north of Sedona, about 90 minutes away. That evening, I went back through 6 nights of backup camera footage. Not all of it, just the 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. window for each night. The same figure appeared in 3 of them. Different locations. The pull-off outside Prescott, a site east of Williams I'd used 2 weeks earlier. A trailhead parking area near Camp Verde. Same time window. Same behavior. Standing within 10 feet of the van, facing it for extended periods. 32 minutes at Camp Verde, 19 minutes outside Williams. 11 minutes at the Prescott pull-off, ending in a knock. 3 different campsites across a 30-mile radius over 2 weeks, and this person was at all of them. I posted about it that night in a van life community I'd been part of since before I left home. Kept the details vague, said I'd noticed someone on my backup camera at multiple spots, asked if anyone else had experienced anything similar. I expected nothing. I got 3 private messages within a few hours. 3 other women, different vans, different routes, different states. Arizona, Utah, and one in southern Nevada, all within the past 60 days. Same behavior described. A figure standing near the vehicle at night, facing it, not approaching, not doing anything. One of them had footage. She sent me a screenshot. The figure in her footage was holding a phone up, screen facing the van. She'd zoomed in on the screenshot until it was barely readable. His phone screen showed a map application, 4 pins on it, moving. One of the pins was her van. One was mine. I don't know whose the other 2 were. I called my brother that night and told him everything. I was in a parking garage in Flagstaff at that point. I hadn't parked anywhere remote since the morning I'd reviewed the footage. He wanted me to go to the police, which I understood, but without a clear threat or a name, there wasn't much to work with. I filed a report anyway. I changed my van's appearance as much as I could. Removed the stickers, got new window coverings, changed the hitch cover, stayed in cities for 6 weeks, kept my spots private, nothing posted online until I was already gone. The first night I went back to a BLM spot, a site I'd never used before and never written down anywhere. I pulled the backup camera footage in the morning. He'd been at my previous location, the one I'd left 6 weeks ago, standing at the empty spot where I used to park, facing the space where my van had been. And then a new pin had appeared on the map, 3 miles from where I was parked that night. I'm in an apartment now. The van is in storage. I haven't slept in it since, and I'm not sure I will again. I've thought a lot about how he found me that second time. I didn't post anything. I didn't use any of my usual apps. The only explanation that works is that he found my vehicle another way. Maybe a plate, maybe something I'm not thinking of. Either that, or the map I saw in that screenshot had more information on it than I could read at that zoom level. I don't know which of those possibilities is worse. The thing I keep going back to is those 11 minutes. Not the following, not the map, not the 3 other women. 11 minutes of standing at my window before knocking. Whatever he was doing in those 11 minutes, deciding something, waiting for something, gathering something, he had enough time to do it and still chose to knock. I don't know what he wanted. I'm grateful every day that I never had to find out. I've been camping my whole life. Grew up in southern Illinois, and if you know that part of the state, you know the Shawnee National Forest is basically the backyard. I've been going up there every spring with the same group of guys for about 7 years now. We know the spots, we know the routine, and we're not the kind of people who imagine things. There were 4 of us on the May 2021 trip. Me, my coworker Derek, and 2 guys we've been going with since high school. We got to our dispersed site off Forest Road 788 on a Friday afternoon and had camp set up before dark. 4 tents, 1 fire ring we'd used the last 2 years running, same flat clearing near a creek bed. Nothing unusual. We ate, had a few beers, and put the fire out properly. I mean properly, not just letting it die. We doused it, stirred the ash, checked the coals were cold. I do HVAC for a living. I know heat. That fire was out. We were all in our tents by around 11. I woke up around 3:30 in the morning, needing to use the bathroom, and stepped out of my tent. The clearing was dark, the way a cloudy night gets dark. No moon, just the ambient gray of the overcast sky. The fire was burning. Not a lot, but burning. A small, low fire in the ring, the kind you get when you build a fire with intention and let it settle. Not an ember that caught from wind. We doused it. There were flames. I stood there for a moment trying to make sense of it. The obvious answer was that one of the other guys had gotten up and restarted it, which would be strange at 3:30 in the morning, but not impossible. I checked the other tents, all zipped shut, all quiet. I woke Derek. He came out, looked at the fire and said nothing for a long few seconds. Then he said, "Did you start that?" I told him no. We stood there together looking at it. The wood was different. I'd built the fire that night. I know what wood I used. We'd gathered it from around the site, the usual mix of oak deadfall you find in that part of the Shawnee. What was burning now included a piece I didn't recognize. A thick log, maybe 4 feet long, placed across the center of the ring. Fresh cut, not deadfall. You could see the cut end was pale and clean. Someone had brought it in from outside the site. We woke up the other 2 guys. All 4 of us stood around the fire in the middle of the night looking at it. Nobody had a good explanation. In the daylight, we found the rest. Our food bag, which we'd hung from a branch on the campsite of a tree, had been taken down and gone through. Not destroyed. Gone through. Items pulled out and laid on the ground nearby. A half-eaten package of beef jerky, the rest of the bag left organized, the opening resealed. Something had eaten maybe a third of the jerky and put the bag back. The camp chairs had been moved. We'd left them around the fire ring. 3 of them were in different positions. Not knocked over, not scattered. Moved, arranged in a tighter cluster facing one direction, away from the tree line. And the ash in the fire ring under the new log had been stirred. Stirred thoroughly, the way you do when you're checking that a fire is genuinely out. Then, the new fire had been built on top of the stirred ash. Whatever had been in our camp had checked that the fire was cold before rebuilding it. That's the part I couldn't get past. That's a level of caution that doesn't fit any animal and barely fits an accidental person. Someone had come into our campsite while 4 people were asleep, checked the fire was out, built a new one with wood they'd brought with them, gone through our food, eaten some of it, put it back, rearranged the chairs, and left. And none of us heard a thing. We packed up and left that morning. We didn't call anyone. I've thought about what I'd even say, that someone relit my campfire and ate some of my jerky. The 4 of us have been back to the Shawnee twice since, different areas, further north. We haven't used that site again. What I can't shake is the chairs. Not the fire, not the food. The chairs. They were moved to face away from the tree line, which means whoever moved them knew where the tree line was, which means they were familiar enough with our site at 3:30 in the morning in complete darkness to position 4 camp chairs with intent. I don't know if they were trying to do us a favor or if they were trying to tell us something. I'm not sure there's a meaningful difference. Derek still talks about it sometimes when we're driving up for the spring trip. Always the same question. You think they're still up there? I always tell him I don't know. That's honest. I don't know. But I do know that whoever rebuilt that fire knew how to put one out first. And that's the kind of person who's been doing this for a long time. This was September of 2020, fall semester of my junior year. A A bunch of us decided to do a camping trip up in the Adirondacks before it got too cold. 6 of us total, 4 guys and 2 girls from our program. We drove up from Albany on a Friday, found a dispersed site off one of the forest roads near Speculator, and set up camp before dark. Pretty standard setup. Tents, fire, the usual. I'm a kinesiology major, physical education track, outdoorsy by default. I've been camping since I was a kid, so I wasn't going in blind. We all knew the area well enough, or thought we did. The first night was fine, nothing happened. We stayed up late by the fire, went to sleep around 2. It was the second night when things started getting off. We'd been hiking most of the day, got back to the campsite around 5, made food. By 9 or 10, it was fully dark, and we were sitting around the fire when one of the guys, Marcus, held up his hand and said, "You hear that?" We all went quiet. Somewhere out in the trees, maybe 60 or 70 yards out, there was a whistle. Single note, held for about 2 seconds, then gone. The kind of whistle a person makes when they're not trying to signal anything specific, more like they're just making noise. A walking around whistle. Probably a hiker, somebody said. We moved on. 20 minutes later, when we all got up to grab more wood from the pile we'd made near the cars, it happened again. Same whistle, but not from 60 yards away, from maybe 30. We grabbed the wood and came back to the fire. Talked about it, not nervously, just noted it. 2 occurrences didn't mean much. Then Leah stood up to walk to her tent to grab a sweatshirt. The whistle came immediately. Not after she sat back down, the moment she stood up and started moving, like it was watching for motion. We all looked at each other. Marcus said, "Okay, that was timed." We tested it. 3 times we had someone stand and take a few steps. 3 times, within a few seconds of the movement starting, the whistle came from the tree line. Not the same spot each time. The direction shifted. Northwest, then directly north, then northeast. Moving position between our tests, but always responding to movement. Then we tried staying completely still. For about 5 minutes, nobody moved. The fire was the only thing changing in the campsite. The whistle came from behind us, not from the tree line in front of the fire, from the trees directly behind where we were all sitting, not 60 yards away, maybe 15. Nobody said anything. We just all turned around at the same time and put our flashlights on the tree line. Empty. No movement, no eyes, nothing. We decided to get into our tents. Not in a panicked way, nobody was running, but the kind of mutual decision where you look around and everyone's already thinking it. We put the fire out, we got in. I was in my tent for maybe 40 minutes, not sleeping, when I heard it again. Single whistle, right outside. The kind of close where you can hear the breath behind it. I texted Marcus, whose tent was 12 feet from mine. He was awake. We both lay there without responding to it, without turning any lights on. It came twice more over the next 20 minutes. Then, nothing. In the morning, we found boot prints. A single set, coming from the north side of the clearing, circling the camp at a distance of about 15 feet, and going back the way they came. The person had walked completely around our tents at some point in the night. The prints were deep. Whoever it was had been moving slowly, carefully, putting their weight down, not passing through. Circling. We looked at the prints, looked at each other, and packed up. We didn't discuss it much on the drive back. What would we have said? Someone was walking in the woods and whistling. Someone circled our camp at night and didn't do anything else. On paper, it doesn't sound like much. In a tent in the Adirondacks at 2 a.m., hearing a whistle from 15 feet away, knowing it's been following your movement for 3 hours, knowing the person who made it is now outside circling, it's a different thing. That was 3 years ago. We haven't done a group camping trip since. Not because we decided not to. It's just never come together the way it used to. I think everyone remembers those prints in the morning and reaches the same place I do when I start trying to plan something. If they were circling at 15 feet and none of us heard them until they were 15 feet away, they could have been closer than that earlier in the night, and we never would have known. We all heard the whistling. We know it was responding to us. We have no idea what they wanted or how long they'd been out there before we noticed. The prints were the right size and depth to be a single adult. That's all I know for certain. One person walking slowly alone. Though I'll be honest, I'm not sure alone makes it better. I need to start by saying I almost didn't go on this trip. I'd been planning it for months. a solo camping weekend in Sequoia National Forest, late August 2023, a site I'd reserved through recreation.gov 3 months in advance. But the week before, I started second-guessing it. I'm 26, I'm a graphic designer, and I'd never done a solo camping trip before. I'd always gone with someone. The whole point of this trip was to prove to myself that I could go alone. I went. I got to my campsite off one of the forest roads south of the General Sherman area around 4 in the afternoon. Got my tent up, organized my gear, and spent the evening doing exactly what I'd planned, reading by the fire, eating the dinner I'd packed, watching the sky go dark through the sequoias. I was proud of myself. It felt like exactly what I needed it to be. I went to bed around 10. I wasn't tired, just being careful about rest since I had a full day of hiking planned. My tent was a 2-person backpacking tent, roomy enough that I could sit up fully inside. I had a headlamp, my phone, a book. I was planning to read until I got sleepy. At 10:47, I heard the sound. It was faint, the kind of thing you convince yourself you didn't hear. A light, metallic sound, the sound a zipper makes when it's moving slowly through its track. Not the fabric rustling of wind against the tent. The zipper, my tent entrance zipper. I turned my headlamp off, not because I thought that was smart, in retrospect it wasn't, but because the instinct was to see what was outside without announcing that I was awake. In the dark, through the mesh panel of the inner tent, I could see the faint silhouette of the door panel. The zipper pull was moving, not fast, about an inch every 2 or 3 seconds, the way you'd move it if you didn't want to make noise. I didn't call out. I didn't move. I tracked the pull from the bottom of the zipper toward the top, watching it rise. When it had traveled about 8 inches, it stopped. Silence, maybe 30 seconds. Then the pull started moving again, slower this time. Another 2 inches up the track, then it stopped again. I want to be precise about this because the precision matters. The zipper was now sitting at exactly the height of my eyes. I was lying on my side facing the door. The gap that would have opened at that height if the zipper had continued would have been at the level of my face. It stopped there and did not move again. I lay completely still for what felt like an extremely long time. The headlamp was off. I had my hand around my phone, but I didn't open any app, didn't turn on a flashlight, didn't make any noise. I just breathed and waited. Eventually, I became aware that whatever presence had been outside the tent was no longer there. Not because I heard anything leave. I didn't, but because the quality of the silence changed. There's a difference between the quiet of being alone and the quiet of trying not to be heard. At some point, the quality shifted back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my sleeping bag until it was light enough to see clearly. Then I got out of my tent and looked at the area around the entrance. The ground outside my tent door was compressed, not footprints. The soil there was too dry and hard for prints, but a general depression consistent with someone crouching or kneeling for an extended period. The grass around the edges of the depression was bent in a way that wind doesn't bend it, bent toward the tent, like something had been pressing against the ground in that direction. And the zipper pull was sitting at exactly the height I'd watched it stop at. I checked it against my own eye level when I crouched in the same position as someone outside the door would crouch. It matched. I packed my tent and drove home that morning. I didn't file a report. I spent the drive trying to construct a version of events where what I'd experienced had a harmless explanation. An animal, but animals don't work zippers. The wind, but the pull moved in a directional track, not a random shake. Someone trying to get into the wrong tent by accident, but the stopping, the waiting, the resuming, the stopping at eye height. Accidents don't have that kind of patience. I've told this story to a few people, and the response I get most often is that I probably imagined it, that I was alone in the dark and spooked myself. Maybe. I was awake. I'd been awake for the 40 minutes since I'd gone to bed. I was not in that half-conscious state where sounds become something else. I heard the zipper, I watched the pull move in the dark, and I watched it stop at the height of my eyes. I bought a tent with an interior locking mechanism before I did my next solo trip. I also didn't go solo for about 8 months after this. The detail I come back to is the pause. The zipper moved about 8 inches, stopped for 30 seconds, and then moved 2 more inches before stopping for good. That pause, 30 seconds of stillness at a half-open zipper, is what I can't construct an innocent explanation for. Whatever was outside my tent stopped partway through what it was doing and waited. Waited to hear if I was awake. I was awake. I think whatever was outside knew that when it stopped the second time. I still don't know why it walked away instead of finishing. Something about these camping horror stories that I can't stop thinking about. In every single one, whoever was out there had more patience than the person they were watching. They waited longer. They planned further ahead. They knew more about the situation than the narrator did. If that doesn't keep you up, I'm not sure what will. Smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me which of these 5 nights would have ended your camping trips for good. Now, if you thought these stories were disturbing, the next video isn't about campsites. It's not about pull-offs or fire rings or places people choose to sleep. It's about what lives where people don't go. Click now to watch 4 disturbing deep woods horror stories. You know that feeling when the trail gets narrower and the canopy closes in and you can't hear anything anymore? That feeling has a reason. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.